Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. It's Friday, the 22nd of August. Now, this is a new candidate that you're going to be meeting today for the first time, a very promising young candidate for Congress. His name is James Hinton. He is running for the U.S. House of Representatives. He is on the ballot in the 5th Congressional District of California. This is the wine country, Napa, Sonoma, Santa Rosa, places around there. And he's on the ballot. He in the primary that was held under the California system, the leading vote getter was Congressman Mike Thompson, a 10-term Democrat, closely linked not only to Nancy Pelosi, but to her sinister husband, Paul Pelosi. But now James Hinton came in second. So he's on the ballot. So we'd like to introduce him to you and commend him to your attention. This is somebody who deserves your support, and this is somebody in a very interesting position because this is a district where there practically is no Republican Party. So it's the kind of future that the entire country will be looking at soon. You get rid of the Republicans, but you still got to deal with those Wall Street Democrats. So, James, welcome.
Thank you for having me on, Webster.
We're delighted. We want you on every week until the election in November, and then hopefully beyond that. So tell us a little bit about your situation. Above all, out there in the 5th Congressional District, what kinds of issues do you find are closest to the hearts of voters and activists?
Economics. The ongoing effects of the 2008 Depression. We're not out of it. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. It could get really bad at any time now. So we need 30 million new jobs. We need a productive economy. We need rising standards of living. This means we need to rebuild the infrastructure of the entire country to start with, because the infrastructure is failing and falling apart. We also have this problem that Wall Street has much too much power. So for economic and political reasons, it is time for Wall Street to begin paying some kind of tax. And right now, they pay virtually nothing. And that starts with a 1% tax on Wall Street turnover. And what I am for is this Wall Street sales tax, also known as the Wall Street transaction tax or the Tobin tax. We need half of this tax in Washington, and half will go to the states as revenue sharing. And that would allow us to ensure, first of all, that there would be no more tax increases at the state level, which is a big issue here in California. And no more sales tax increases, and no more property tax increases. And after the state is fully funded, then we can use that money to focus on infrastructure. But when you get the big infrastructure, we want to have the Federal Reserve open up a special stimulus window. That was done for AIG, that was done for money market funds, and therefore we want a credit stimulus window. I'd recommend about $5 trillion. The banks, they had about $27 trillion available. That was the line of credit that was there if they needed it. I'm saying about $5 trillion principally for infrastructure to get on the way towards 30 million productive new jobs that we would need for full employment for the first time since 1945. Of course, since we have this terrible problem of student loans, high-interest student loans of $1 trillion total, I would suggest the Federal Reserve simply refinance those student loans at 0%. That would do a great deal toward diminishing this terrible student loan burden on working families. In the 21st century, in order to be fully employable, people need to have a college degree, at least a community college degree, and preferably a bachelor's degree. Are you there, Webster?
Yes, excellent. No, I'm. So what you're talking?
Sometimes. What's that?
what you're talking is a credit stimulus, right? It's not a budget deficit. It's not not a fiscal stimulus, and it's not a monetary stimulus of printing money, but it's a credit stimulus. And as you say,
Correct.
done for AIG and all kinds of Wall Street institutions in the years after the panic of 2008. So you're essentially saying, make that available to the productive economy. Now, suppose I'm a student.
Good.
If I've got $100,000 of debt, tell me exactly how that would work for me. In other words, I've got student loan debt, which is going at 6, 7, 8%.
Instead of you giving Goldman Sachs 8% interest on that $100,000 of student debt you acquired every month, you'd instead get a refinance from probably a 0% century bond or some sort into this $1 trillion window where we would refinance your loan at you for 0%.
All right. So essentially, there'd be no burden increasing. In other words, we'd freeze that amount, and this whole burden of excessive interest would be
right. You'd still pay
neutralized.
back $100,000 just without the interest to Goldman Sachs.
Right, and of course, I suppose you could have that repaid over a longer period than today is the case, right? It could be, decades.
Right. Well, you gotta make sure you have enough money to eat and provide for your family, and then after that, we could start paying off our student debt. But they seem like they want first the interest on the loan, and then you can worry about feeding your family after that.
All right, that's excellent. So essentially, you're talking Wall Street sales tax and deprivatize.
Right.
The Federal Reserve, federalize it, make it act like a national bank.
Right, deprivatize it. I'm running on two main economic points. We have a depression, we have a stagnation and decline of the standard of living. Our standard of living in the United States has gone down by 2/3 since 1970. Unemployment, and therefore I want, one, the Wall Street sales tax. When Jerry Brown was about to run for governor to make his political comeback, people recommended to him that he build the Wall Street sales tax into his platform. And tragically, he sought the advice of Paul Pelosi, who lives here in District 5, the Wall Street predator, who was Nancy Pelosi's husband. Paul Pelosi said, "No, don't do that. You can't afford to do that on your own. You have to wait for Washington to do that." So it is a federal tax.
Hang on one second, James. We're going to get you at the top of the next segment. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. We're delighted to be on the phone with James Hinton, an independent candidate for United States House of Representatives in the 5th Congressional District, Napa-Sonoma, wine country, north of Berkeley, north of the Bay area in California. And he's running against Mike Thompson, 10-term Democrat, Pelosi loyalist, part of the Nancy and Paul Pelosi machine. And he's actually the number 2 Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, which is supposed to be a watchdog agency, but obviously he has not been doing his job there. But we're talking about economics today. James, in terms of this story you were telling, very interesting, that Jerry Brown, somebody had suggested to him, why not go with a Wall Street sales tax? You're going to need revenue. And it was Paul Pelosi who said no. And, of course, the interesting thing about that is this is not the way it works. In the United States, California sets the pace. California is the leader, and then Washington follows. Paul Pelosi says, no, I want Washington to lead and California to follow. That makes no sense, does it?
No, it doesn't make any sense. They should listen to the voters.
Sure thing. Now, James, tell us about your website and tell us how people can volunteer, how they can contribute, how they can help your campaign.
Okay, you can donate to hintonforcongress.com. I've gotten this far and won the primary with a couple $100 of donations so far. So any small amount I can stretch and would go only for necessities We want to get some yard signs out there and some more pamphlets and buttons and bumper stickers printed, the paraphernalia.
And maybe some radio spots on local AM.
We want to get radio spots. We've got a couple interns from Sonoma State helping us out. A couple students there. We're going to be at Oliver's Market this Sunday from 1 to 4. They can stop by and meet and greet us. Check out the platform and tell us what they like.
Okay.
Tell us what their concerns are.
Good. And one other thing, James, the agitation, I think, on the West Coast there's a lot of agitation for living wage, increase the federal minimum wage. How do you come down on that?
Oh, we want to raise the wage. We want to fight for 15. So the reason for this fight is if you go through the history of the minimum wage, the buying power of the minimum wage in constant dollars peaked at about $13 in 1968. You have to restore the buying power of the minimum wage. $15 seems to be the emerging consensus. There's absolutely no evidence that leads to the destruction of jobs. All the research and studies indicate that it increases the number of jobs to some extent. The fight for 15 is very popular out here. But what else sets me apart is 0% student loan refinancing. Elizabeth Warren, at her best, said, let's get student loans down to 0.75% through the federal discount window. But then she unfortunately backed off. That shows what the problem is with the Democratic Party. Hillary didn't want that. Obama didn't want that. Biden didn't want that. Harry Reid didn't like that. Whatever it was, she is now back to about 3.5%. We're now saying 0% for American students. If you are a zombie bank, you can get 0%. Those guys are insolvent. All they have is bankrupt derivatives. Instead, we want to invest in the future of the country. Every student loan should be refinanced at 0%. It's the very least you can do.
All right, James, that's excellent. We obviously wish you every success, and we want you to come back every week from now on. You've already told us a couple of the things you're going to be doing this coming week. I urge everybody to go to hintonforcongress.com. Am I right?
You're right. And also
hintonforcongress.com.
Yeah, even from there you can get our social media links to Facebook and Twitter from the website.
Perfect. All right. So I think you're actually in an excellent position, right? You are on the ballot. There is no Republican. And people, correct, I think, are beginning to get tired of Mike Thompson. And we'll have some things to say about him in the area of his supposed oversight of the intelligence community, right? The one obvious thing is if he was supposed to be providing oversight as a watchdog over the NSA and the CIA, and we've now had NSA wiretaps, CIA running the Arab Spring, the emergence of ISIS, and all kinds of other provocations. You know, what are you doing, Mike Thompson? Where are you?
Yeah, well, I think he's out to dinner.
He's out to lunch, I think. All right. Thank you very much, James. We'll see you next week. Hang in there and keep us informed. All right?
All right. Thanks a lot, Webster. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Delighted to meet you now on the radio here for the first time.